I've for a last minute got together Mattriarchy. Oh my goodness, I'm still breathing heavy from racing to the computer as quick as I could. So I'm a little off of my game, I guess you'd say. I had an unexpected delay coming back into town this evening, but I am of course the host, Matt Reese, from South Nebraska, which is this evening cloaked in darkness, as it would be this time of year. And I'm very happy to have on Doug Garrett and George Alexopoulos. Am I saying that right?
Yes, sir.
Hey, 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 hey. Now, is that Greek?
Yes, it is. It is.
It is. Okay. Okay.
The
I
Greek
thought
is.
so.
I just, George A is fine too. A lot of people I'd be a student in school, and every time the teacher would pause, I would know it's my name.
Well, I enjoy like saying things like foreign language words and things like that. It's I wouldn't say it's a hobby, but it's right next to being a hobby for me. So
Yeah, mine's not so bad as far as there are some really bad Greek names that are impossible to pronounce, but mine's it's like Smith as far as Greek names go.
yeah. I have I was able to really impress a fellow at a wedding a couple of years ago because he was Iranian, and I said, "What part? I don't really know anything about the geography of Iran, but where are you from? Tell me about it." And he said, "You said Iran," and I said, "Yeah, that's how you say it, right?" And he's like, "No, that's how you say it." He was very pleased that I didn't call it Iran.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty cool. Did he have a cool life story?
Yeah, actually, he had come to America in the 70s for schooling. And then when the Shah regime fell, he was sort of stuck here for a while because there was all that tension in the late 70s when they had the I can't remember the name of the Muslim uprising. Um, he was kind of stuck here for a while, and so he applied to stay because things got real bad back there. But in then in the early 80s, travel became a thing, but he had kind of built a life here. So he actually became a citizen, and ended up marrying an Iranian gal that was friends of friends of friends, kind of a thing. So their kids were born over here, so that's the story.
It's weird how life goes sometimes.
Yeah, they were actually both from Tehran, but like opposite sides of the city. And this is the crazy thing is like I didn't realize that Tehran, it's like 3 Dallases. It's just huge. So there are people that like at least when he was growing up who had never been to the other side of town because the city's so big.
Wow. Did you ever hear of a comic called Persepolis?
I have the movie. I have not read the comic.
Yeah, the movie's basically the movie version of the comic, but yeah, if anyone's curious about that, that's a really good story of, I guess, how Iran was very secular for a while, and then all of a sudden there was this enormous burst of religiosity, and it was never the same again.
Yeah. Well, and a big part of that had to do with like the not just the religious aspect, but the politics too, because like there was after the end of World War II, and this actually it had started after World War One. There'd been just a lot of unease because of the destruction of the Ottoman Empire, and even though like Persia or Iran as it wasn't actually under the Ottomans per se, still the unsettling of the Ottoman Empire still had like waves that affected how Persia ran itself.
Yeah.
So there were traditionalists, and then there were more moderates that were really reacted like violently. And I don't mean necessarily with like violence. I mean like a severe reaction. Looking at how Ataturk was changing And so there was a lot of unrest that was going on in the 40s and the early 50s. And then Britain had gone in and had basically put all of their like political power and money and had lended military support to the Shah's family because they were more moderates. Well, and so a lot of Iranian people who were more conservative Muslim also were really irritated that this outside person had stuck their nose in the business of all of that. That the Britons and the Americans by proxy were involved in their business, and that was one of the reasons that I'm going to forget the dude's name. Why he was able to rise to power so much, but
kind of reminds me of Hong Kong.
It's not unlike Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Of course, the stuff that's going on in Hong Kong now was going on in Iran 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So the Green Revolution. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I'll have to look into it some more. It's
about the same time as the Arab Spring.
Okay, that's what I was going to. Okay, so those were separate events.
Yeah, they were separate events, largely because the Green Uprising or the Green Revolution was anti-traditionalist, where most of the Arab Spring is very pro-traditionalist, and a lot of the young people that were involved in the Green Uprising wanted to go back to the not the system of the Shah. They wanted to have more of a representative government, one that allowed people to operate whatever faith or philosophy they had, that they be more secularized as a nation.
Yeah,
and they were basically just blown up and gunned down in the street. Tiananmen Square. That dates me.
Yeah, man. When I was, I was too young for Tiananmen Square to know what was going on, of course. But I also have a story with my family was displaced from Greece. Half my family left Greece because of the Nazis, and they ended up in Turkey and getting displaced all over the place. Turkey kicked them out. They ended up in Russia. And then my great grandfather got kicked out of Russia by Stalin, and it's a miracle he didn't get killed. It's a crazy story how they ended up migrating to America and stuff. But it's really weird how
were they Eastern Orthodox?
The side that got kicked around, they're called what is it? I don't remember the name, but basically they're Protestant, the equivalent of Protestant, and in Greece, they were considered like cults,
right,
because Greece is very Orthodox, and I guess you could say like evangelical Greeks, that sort of thing. But through networks of churches, they were able to, I guess, move here more easily because I guess with immigration, there's sponsoring and stuff. If you know people who are here already, it's easier to migrate. So my family
it used to be that way a lot more before the 80s, but that's the whole thing.
Yeah, they migrated here. Well, it's not interesting to anybody, but yeah, they migrated around then, and so it's an interesting story how they got bounced around Europe, and no one wanted to keep them in Greece. The country itself was in such trouble, so they left, and it's the weirdest miracle that I'm first generation.
Oh wow.
So it's really interesting to hear all the immigration stuff, and I'm very firmly on the side of immigration should not be an open borders thing. We could talk about that. I don't want to talk about this boring stuff. I'm sorry, but it's fascinating as a first generation American to hear all this stuff. I'm
I'm a third generation, right? So my family had pretty long generations, but my grandfather was born in 1905. He was the first generation American, right? His father had immigrated as a young child, and his father had come over in 1871. And so some long generations, but I'm still only third generation. So our immigrant story is pretty recent. I grew up hearing about it all the time. They came here to homestead, right? So they came here to work themselves to death in the soil to make a life, That was a time where there was pretty close to open immigration, but it was still, pretty heavily regulated as far as, you had to go through medical checks and all that kind of stuff to make sure that you weren't carrying in typhus or all kinds of things.
Man.
And so I mean, I love talking about that stuff. I actually had Tim Lim on a couple weeks ago, and he's first generation as well. And then we got to talking about his family story a little bit too. And they left China and went to the Philippines, and then ended up coming to America. So I love that stuff. You're never going to bore me talking about that.
All right, yeah. If we get bored talking about other stuff, I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, Doug, we haven't gotten a word out of you other than hey.
Oh, I'm just been listening, man. You say this is boring, but I find this fascinating. My family's been here forever. They came over before, well, on the Garrett side, they came over before this was a country. They were like some of the first people from England, Scotland, and all that mess.
Cool.
So
yeah, on my mom's side are Matans, and they were here from before the Revolution too, back to the French and Indian War at least. But my the Reeses are very recent. So. But yeah,
man, I need to learn more about that stuff.
So we've got a couple people in the chat. We've got the Metal saying ahoy there. Got Pickles. I'm also known as English Nachos. He said I'm being English and listening to Americans talk about freedom. So,
boy, America's a great country, isn't it?
I love this place so much. He's got the little pukey emoji there going, but I tell you honestly, the thing is, Pickles, I think you're one of us. You're just not here yet. I honestly, talking to you, I really think that's the situation. You were an American born elsewhere. You need to just save up the cash and figure out what over here.
He's American in his heart, where it counts.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing I love about this country so much, right? I mean, I was born here. I lucked into it, so to speak. But America isn't just like, it's not blood and soil. America is it's a nation built on the creed. It just happens to have borders because all nations have borders. It's on a particular piece of land, and that's helped shape that. But yeah, the fact of the matter is that there's part of the reason I love hearing immigrant stories is I love hearing the stories of those Americans born elsewhere, just knew that this is where they needed to be. Where, this is
I don't know about you. I mean, I love America. I love, like you said, lucky to be born here. But man, the respect I have for people who went through packing up and just coming here and coming in the right way and doing all that stuff, they were driven. You know what I mean? And still, I understand people wanting to come to this country. We live in the greatest country in the world. And some people will argue that with me, but whatever.
Yeah. Nobody has ever, floated on a lawn chair across shark-infested waters to go to Finland, And God bless the Cubans who have had that opportunity too. I mean, I'm not meaning that disparagingly, except to Finland. A little bit. And not exclusively Finland. I mean, that's the people do that to get to Taiwan, and people did do that to get to Hong Kong. Those are places where people are like, wait a second, I won't be a slave of the state. Yes, I would love to do that, and I would rather take the chance at dying on the open sea than continue to be property of this government. That's a hell of a thing to face up against. So people are like, other places are free, and I'm like, dude, nobody's breaking their back to get to Ireland. I mean, and Ireland's not a bad place to live. I've talked to people that live there, and they're like, hey, I like it. Okay, that's great, but that's not the way people are. It's not the trip it goes to. By the way, Star Storyteller Claire has just joined us in the chat. So hello. And also, my laptop is telling me it needs electricity, so bear with me.
Well, just to continue here on our little tirade about America, it kills me to see so many people wanting to give their freedoms away, wanting the government to be in more control, and our forefathers would be rolling over in their graves. Sorry, everybody, for talking political talk and whatnot. I'm usually not that guy, but you guys are pulling on my American pride there on the heartstrings. We get
Well,
talking
and you're coming on this show, and I've make no secret about this. And George, you may not agree with me. I know Doug's heard me go off on this before.
Hmm.
The fact of the matter is really everything comes down to politics in one way or another. And we have with that is, and not necessarily like who you're voting in office or what you think the correct marginal tax rate is, but I mean the way that we relate to each other in groups.
Mm-hmm.
Just that really encompasses the politics. So if we're talking about the important questions, if we're talking about the the needful things, right? Where politics is going to come up.
Mm-hmm.
And if we shy away from saying, "Oh, we shouldn't talk about freedom because that's political," well, why are you taking my freedom to talk about freedom away from me? That instantly becomes a political question,
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to say I don't want to be overly partisan. I mean, I will tell you my partisan feelings and my all that kind of stuff. Hey, Matt C has joined us in the chat as well. Um, but I don't. I'm not gonna, and I don't want to. I don't want to like try to force people to think what I think about a thing, because that's a very anti-freedom position, and I very strongly in freedom. But at the same time, I don't want to exclude topics just because they're sensitive. So.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, if we talk about politics, I say just the root word of politics anyway. Some people have disagreed with me, is polite. So I like the idea of even if I disagree with someone, or if they have some position that I'm going to disagree with, I'm happy to hear what they have to say. I like to try to think that I have enough integrity as my own person that, whatever they say isn't going to cast a magic spell on me and ruin my life. Like, if someone wants to say something bad or good, it's, the whole point of talking is to exchange ideas. And I think I'm enough of an adult, maybe some people aren't, that someone can tell me their perspectives on life and it's not going to, like, I don't know. I guess they're scared of having their mind changed about certain things, so they don't even want to hear. They don't want to hear views that might, I don't know. Their worldview is so fragile that they can't hear opposing views, I suppose.
I think part of it is that, honestly, because I think because we don't teach people to think critically about stuff, we just teach people to believe things. That whole follow your heart kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pickles is shilling his Cyberfrog review there in the chat. I gotta share that up there. His channel's pretty funny.
I gotta check it out.
Yeah,
I still have to do mine. I tried to read it a couple times and I can't seem to get into it.
Yeah, I that's a whole different thing. But anyway, later.
Okay.
I say I think that we're not taught to think critically, and so we have all this feelings language, and I'm not saying feelings are bad. Feelings are good, right? We have all of this feelings language in our culture, and my truth and all that kind of wishy-washy kind of stuff, and so any of our opinions, they end up being reflexive of our person, right? Rather than being something we've come to and that we've committed ourselves to a truth outside of ourselves. Excuse me. So with that, we personalize all of our opinions on something. So when somebody attacks one of our opinions, it ends up being interpreted as they am attacking our persons, and then that's fighting words. And it's like I watched your video about cult behavior today, and I was like, man, we're gonna have a good conversation tonight, man.
Sure.
But that was one of those things you're talking about, that cult behavior. I think it's not just limited into cults, because I think that it's something that is a basic group out group idea, and the idea that we have that we can't separate our concepts from our persons, and so we rightly want to defend our persons and our personhood, but we we falsely attribute our ideas to our personhood, and then we assume we can't be wrong. Even if we think we can be wrong, we don't react like we think we can be wrong because we're not having a holistic view of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's sort of like a person's worldview is their compass. And if you bring in too many ideas to kind of mess around with their compass, they won't know where they are anymore. And I guess any human is a creature of habit. We don't like feeling involuntarily disoriented. So if someone's going to come along and say, hey, man, can I tell you something that's going to blow your mind? And then like tell you all kinds of like weird red pill stuff. It's like, wait, you're completely destroying my illusions of, or not illusions, but like my perception of reality. I don't like this. I'm not ready for this right now. So maybe
I think it's one of the things too that people, and I'm gonna sound really arrogant here, but I think there's two classes of people. I think there's thinkers and reactors. I think there's multiple things, but I think that people can be grouped into those sort of reactions. And I think thinkers want to plumb, and reactors just want to function. Whatever that level is, they have their standard operating procedure, and that's just what they do. Sorry, something else in the chat caught my. But I think so. Those of us sometimes who are thinkers, who have come to a realization or want to give this, want to express a new idea or something that's changed the way they look at the world. I know because I've had problems with this. We start beating people in the head with this new knowledge, and then, but learning happens inside of you, right? And so you can't evoke that in somebody else. So I think that by backing people with this knowledge, sometimes what we do is we end up having people recoil and not being able to internalize it because they didn't delve for themselves, you know. And so because they didn't go through the thought process or whatever, then I think some people just recoil away from new information, and then you're the enemy because you've disturbed and you've mocked my work. And we hold this idea that we're right sometimes, I think, very, very close to our chest, instead of embracing that we're very wrong. I think that another part of that issue Star brings up, that we're taught not to talk about politics at all instead of dialoguing. Mm-hmm. That the other side of the polite society, you know, where we don't, you don't talk politics and religion and football. You know. Then what is there left to talk about?
Comic books.
Yes, but remember, Doug, that still becomes.
Apparently, it does become political.
So, Pickle says my brother is quite political. If he was an American, he'd have a doomsday bunker. We all should, really.
I respect the doomsday bunker.
I can't dedicate myself to that level of preparation, and I have enough time paying for today because, single income household, 2 kids, mortgage, all that kind of stuff. And I chose a career in human services, so I don't exactly make a lot of money, which is okay. I don't want a lot of money, but I can't save up a year's worth of food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's sort of like, if we have the right firearms to protect ourselves from the government, we also should have food to protect us from the government. So you can't hold an effective siege if you're not prepared.
I'm being attacked by a dog, so I might have to eat myself. That's what's going on.
So, but yeah, there you have it. I like America.
That I've never heard anything so hateful in my life. Whenever I draw a comic strip where I have somebody like wearing a MAGA hat, instead of wearing a MAGA hat, I just have it says I like America. Mm-hmm. And I have it so that like that position is now the most hateful thing from the left. You can't even say that you like America. I don't know, that kind of ironic humor.
Well, and it's that idea that you believe in American exceptionalism, somebody will ask, and then somebody else says, well, every country is exceptional. Like, okay, when every country is exceptional, no country is exceptional. Mm-hmm. You're asking the question, because American exceptionalism isn't the idea that we're better than other people. It's that there is something decidedly different about the way we've chosen to do things in other places. And I think it goes down to the value of humanity level, really. And I mean, I think there are other creedal nations that exist now, but none of them that, I mean, we were the first, and I think that makes a difference. So,
Well, we live in a society today where everybody has to be a winner. Nobody can be second place. Everybody's first place and all that. So people get really butthurt when you start talking about something being number one.
So the medal, who is knows something about languages, brings up this about polites, which means citizen, is where politics comes from.
Yep.
But to act polite is to act as a citizen, so I'll let it slide. And the medal is nearly as pedantic as I am, so that's a. But yeah, I am filming at home, Claire, because I now have internet at my house. So I have entered the 21st century, and I now can get email from my bed instead of having to go to the office to do it. So there you go. They had a sale that it was, so I was like, I can afford this now. So, ta-da! So yeah. Speaking of politics, let's go ahead and transition just a little bit because George, when you first pitched or advertised, maybe not first, but the first time I saw it, Mary Sue, your comic, and you picked a charged title for it,
Yeah.
Which I found very interesting. What was your impetus for this strip?
Well, it was already a written story. If anyone doesn't know, I used to do graphic novels and stuff before the huge graphic novel crash in the late 2000s. So I was prepping my career and doing all these scripts, and I wanted to, do this for a living. And all these publishers that I was in touch with went out of business. So then I was forced to basically go indie again. Not a bad thing. And, I got a normal job for a few years. And I'm just kind of floating around, but I kept writing. And Mary Sue, what I've now called Mary Sue, was not called that before. It was just called Power Suit. But I had this whole story, and I wanted to turn it into a book. And I was so passionate about it, but I had to just shelve it. And I have another dozen stories ready to go. But the name itself, Mary Sue, of course, it's an ironic choice because the whole story is about a woman who has access to an incredibly overpowered power suit. And, it plays on the idea of how does she handle herself despite, like, she has this thing and she wins every fight in air quotes. But does that mean you can win a fight, but that doesn't mean you win what do they say? You win the battle, but you don't win the war kind of thing.
Right.
So it's, even though she's the most powerful person on the battlefield, that doesn't necessarily mean she's going to win. So I want to keep throwing her in all of these different types of situations where beating up the opponent is not necessarily the winning condition. So I want to try to make the fight smart as opposed to just, big explosions, and that kind of thing bores me, to be honest, anyway.
Right. But with big explosions, right?
There are huge explosions. I was working on a panel here today. I wish I could show it, but it would have spoilers.
Okay.
A huge laser kind of thing, and she's making a really funny facial expression. I want to share it so bad.
Oh man.
But yeah, there's going to be lots and tons of action. I love action, but I want it to have context. And I also love the idea of her, like, she's really strong and she fights strong opponents, but I want the fights to be smart. So it's not about who hits the other person the hardest. So I don't want to spoil anything. Gosh, can I give?
No, that's perfectly fine. So you say this is a script you'd had worked on before and self-publishing it. Now you've been, and of course I'm going to leave the link up here. It is in the chat for those of you guys who are watching. How many pages is Mary Sue going to be?
Well, the campaign that you linked to, thank you for that, by the way, is it's 2 issues. So each one is about 30 pages-ish. I still haven't fully locked them down because as I'm drawing, I'm still kind of editing and revising. but yeah, it's going to be about 30 pages each, so 2 issues. And if this campaign goes well, and if everyone gets their books and likes it, I'm going to be launching the next campaign before the holidays, I hope. And if people want to keep reading, it's going to be a series, hopefully. So we'll see. If people want more issues, then I'll keep going until the end. There's
And so, what is your entry level price at that you guys have?
the lowest is the digital edition, which is $5 an issue. So like the basic retail price, and then it gets can't remember what the next tier is, but it's very expensive right now, and I always feel bad about that. But I want to be upfront about that. That's like the sort of like startup, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's terrible. Like I'm trying to like make all these moves that I can't talk about just yet, but like the next campaign, I want the entry level to be the printed edition. And I can offer the digital for even cheaper, but like guys like Peter Samedi are offering books for so cheap that I really want to be able to compete like with retail prices, let's say. So right now the books are really expensive, but I want next time, hopefully, if I can increase the readership, that means I can lower the price and I'll still make the same amount that I did this time, but I'll have double the readers, let's say.
Yeah.
So it all depends. Sorry.
I would say that's a big balancing act. I mean, I've been doing web and print indie comics since '06, and we've sold maybe 200 units in the last 10 years. So of course, mostly that's cons, small local shops. I live in a pretty rural area, and as I said, I'm not loaded, so like trying to drive to a big show is not something that's been a priority.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that, I know that pain of like trying to find that right price point where you're able to pay your time or pay the artist or keep them incentivized, and also, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, you got things like just basic utilities and food and all that stuff, right? So everybody has a monthly amount that they have to hit quota wise, right, just to survive, which is fine. And then there's other questions like, am I going to try to invest in the future, let's say? So again, things I can't talk about just yet, but if the book is well received and that people want more, I've taken steps to ensure that the next print run will cost way, way less. So it's a risk. I mean, indie comics has always been about risk and reward.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to decide, like, are you going to try to do this full-time, part-time? How many books are you going to try to release per year? That sort of thing.
Yep.
I'm trying to do this full-time because I'm of the opinion that I've been trying to do indie stuff for so long and like just barely surviving. So I figure I'm going to go all in. And if I can't do this, then I got to get another career because I can't keep doing this like at my age. So I'm putting everything I have into this one campaign and into the next campaign and so on until either I completely blow out and then I have to get another career or it just keeps going. So basically I'm just putting all of my energy into this one thing and seeing what happens.
Very cool. Very cool. So a couple notes from the chat. One, the metal says, you do need big explosions every so often. I've already drawn 2 nukes with only 5 chapters in his webcomic. Also, X Dynaless Chaos is his webcomic. It is a trip and a half, man. It's a wild little universe he's got going. Full of paranormal and martial artists and, dimensions, and it's fun stuff. And so yeah, that's part of it. We do have a couple of questions for the group here. One is that Matt C has asked, this is, get George to talk about the great graphic novel Crash. I would love to hear that. So tell us what your experience with that.
Okay. Well, I worked with a publisher called Tokyo Pop. If anyone's in let's see, in the early 2000s to 2005, let's say, I was in school and they were really on their way up. They were translating a lot of manga and stuff like that. They were really taking over Barnes and Noble. So they were doing really good. And then they started this initiative for original English language manga, or OEL manga. So they were trying to get American creators to make manga. And they had this contest called the Rising Stars of Manga, where you could submit a 20-page short story. And if you were in the top 3, I think, you would get contacted by an editor, and they would try to, get you to make a series for them. And long story short, I made one book for them, which sucked, but whatever. And that was in 2006. And then Tokyopop went out of business in 2008. And long story short, Borders closed because of the crash and the recession, excuse me. And a lot of publishers like Viz pulled back. Just everybody like shrank. Borders closed. So OEL manga stopped being a thing. And then I just had to go. I couldn't do indie comics anymore. No publisher would talk to me after that point. I don't know if I just sucked or what. But yeah, so I drew comic strips and my own indie comics, and years went by that way.
Yeah. Well, that's weird that they just like nobody would talk to you after having been published. Do you think it was your connection to the company that folded, or did people just hate you?
No, I for a little while I thought they hated me, because I don't know why. Who knows why? But like I think it was just as simple as my art was pretty rough back then, I guess, and Tokyopop itself was not known for the greatest quality books. But like there weren't very many options at that time. Like there was Oni Press, who was doing Scott Pilgrim, which was kicking so much ass, and Seven Seas, I think, was a thing. I did a short story with Yen Press, who translates Korean manga. How many indie publishers were there? I tried Dark Horse. They never responded. I tried the big 4, basically. None of them responded. Image didn't respond. But, I look back on the pitches, and they were pretty rough. So I guess they weren't in the mood. They wanted really professional, polished stuff, I think. And my stuff back then was more, I'm a guy trying to become a manga artist as opposed to I am a manga artist.
Right.
So if I had tried now with my current skill level, I think I would have gotten a different response. But today, it's such a different atmosphere. So,
on that subject, so were they looking for trying to do like a Shonen Jump kind of thick anthology kind of a deal, or were they looking for a glossy Barnes and Noble product?
Yeah, the books. In Japan, they call them tankobon. It's the volumes that you'll see at a Barnes & Noble's, like Volume 1, Volume 50, that sort of thing. They would pay, in the contract, they would pay for an entire book from you, or they would want a 3-book pitch from you. And so like my one book that I did with them, it's called Go With Grace. It sucks, but it was like 180 pages, and they paid for it all at once. And it took me 9 months to produce. Yeah, that's what the business model they were trying to do, and they were looking for what you could call a cash cow, I suppose, because like those big Shonen Jump, Scott Pilgrim, yeah, something like that. Or in Japan, you got the Dragon Ball sort of thing, and Dragon Ball and One Piece are floating all the other stories. Like they don't make money, but Dragon Ball does. So you want that big cash cow in the anthology. So people buy the book, the anthology, to read Dragon Ball, but then they also read all these other books. So that the anthology thing is a brilliant idea. I don't know if it was ever done properly in America, but someday it should.
I think it was, but I'm talking like 1970s, right?
Yeah.
Like World's Finest, Brave and the Bold.
They tried it with like heavy metal and stuff.
Heavy metal was a thing, yeah. But it was one of those things where that wasn't a meat and potatoes back then. That was the training book. So you get Superman family, Batman family. It'd have like 1 or 2 reprints. It'd have a couple of original stories. It'd have some tryouts and like some backups. So that would be your where people would get their feet wet in the door for new artists and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
2 in 1 did that same kind of thing. And you could do, if you could tell a compelling story in 8 pages, well then we'll give you another 8 pages, and I'll give you the 10. We'll give you the 12 pager to fill in kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that's how it used to be back in the day. But that was like before direct the direct market. The direct market, honestly, like when when the comic book industry went exclusive with Diamond, and that started in, I think, um, Marvel shuttered their newsprint. I mean, their newsstand contracts in '05, I want to say, maybe '04. And that was the death of I think in a lot of ways the death of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
It had been going down before that because of just the speculation market. But when when I talk about the industry, I mean I'm talking about the ability for like some fanboy to work himself up out of making little pitches to become something else.
Yeah.
Comics stopped being in grocery stores and gas stations. Forget it. They're just it cut so much of that entry level market out.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's virtually been declining sales since then, and nobody admits it. That's the thing I don't get.
Yeah, there's so many different, like, no one wants to take the blame and no one wants to do the extra work to bring it back. Like I talked to my local comic shop people a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago. They were telling me about, the big two are screwing them and Diamond's screwing them. Everyone's screwing them. And I'm like, well, is there anything indie people can do to help? And they're like, no, we're doomed. They're like, well, great talking to you. But like, I don't know how, what am I supposed
to pay more attention to Pete Sametti? I'm telling you, that guy's got a mission.
He's onto something. Yeah.
He is. That competition is the only thing. And that's like I said, that when Diamond was quite a thing for a while, but it was its size masked its bad business model. Yeah. The business model is no competition and fewer facings. How are you going to make it? Every business in the world is that your McDonald's, your Walmarts, your Burger Kings, your Barnes and Noble even exists by luring people in, having them sit around, offering them ridiculous sales, as many places as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing that really hurt comics, like you were saying, you would have a lot of casual buyers. If they were hanging up in Walmart and you walked by, when I was a kid, that's the only place I could get comics. There's no comic store within like an hour, 2 hours of here. Mm-hmm. You just might be walking through and look over on the rack and see Spider-Man and be like, hey, that looks cool. I'm going to buy that. Yeah. They cut so many of those sales out. And really, you look over at the comic rack, you've got $1.50 Spider-Man comic. Most people will pay $1.50. That's like a candy bar and a drink.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. Think about it like this, right? Like that was how we got into comics. Was they were sitting around the co-op, they were sitting around the whatever, right? And I remember I went. My introduction to comics was when I was a little kid. DuckTales was on the television, right? And I saw the first season of DuckTales, and then we moved up here to Nebraska, and it wasn't on anymore. And I wanted my Duck fix. It was fun adventure. It was various cultures around the world. It felt like it meant something. It had all of these mythologic overtones, and I dug mythology and stuff. And little did I know. Well, then I saw the DuckTales comics on the shelf at the co-op, and I was like, ooh, it's Uncle Scrooge Adventures. Little did I know it's reprints of Carl Barks stories from the 40s. Oh, it's New Adventures. I haven't seen any of these. So I pick them up and I flip them through it, and then sitting right next to me, it's Batman, and I'm like, well, that guy looks awesome. I'm gonna go check it out. And it was it, man. I was hooked, and and I got it. I earned a little pocket change vacuuming my parents' bedroom, and that's what I used to buy comics for a long time. And, there's that experience doesn't exist anymore.
I have a very similar experience, but it was with Ninja Turtles. Love the Ninja Turtles cartoon. Watch Ninja Turtles every morning. Go to Walmart, Ninja Turtles comics. It was the Archie ones, and so do chores around the house or make good grades, whatever, and get a comic book. And from there, it went to Spider-Man, X-Men, Batman, all that stuff. And it's really hurting that the casual shopper can't run into this. You have to go to a specialty shop. I don't know about you guys, but we've all been to the comic shops that just kind of suck. You walk in and you're not the regular customer, or who knows, they just give you a dirty look and they don't want to talk to you. They don't want to help you find anything. So it's like, well, I'm not going back there. I'll buy it off eBay or whatever.
And then you're like, so, and then the thing I love is you go into some place like that and you're looking through the back issue bin, and I'm like, okay, oh hey, it's Mr. T7 from Now Comics. Does this have the card in it? Are you gonna buy it or not? Like,
Yeah.
Can I open it? No. Oh, okay. Okay, I guess you don't need my $3 for this $1.50 comic. I'll go get it off eBay.
Exactly.
My LCS, I mean, I'm spoiled because I live in New Jersey, so I've got a million comic shops in my area. But the one I was talking to, well, they have to pay high rent, so they're also going out of business for different reasons. They were saying the only time someone goes into their shop anymore is when they've read good reviews online and they already know what they're going to buy, so they don't actually hang out. Nobody hangs out in the LCSs anymore. So I was thinking, let's say guys like us, we make a book that no one's heard of. The only time someone's going to, let's say I want to try to get Mary Sue up on a shelf. And I know my local shop owner, so I say, hey, can you put it up on the shelf where people can see it? They say, yeah, sure. But nobody really browses around. They're not going to look at it unless it has a great cover or something. They're going to open it up and, oh, what's this book about? People don't do that anymore. There's nothing in a comic shop. We talk about there's no browsing culture. I used to have an LCS where they had arcade machines and the young kids would hang out there. And then they got robbed a couple times and then they closed their shop. But there used to be a hangout culture at a comic shop. I don't know how it is these days, but it sounds like people just go into shops, buy what they need, and leave again. They don't hang out anymore and browse.
Well, our shop in town here, and like I said, I live in a little town, but we still have a comic shop because it's also a card shop, like Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
And they have open tournaments, and they also sell used video games, and they get people to come in and hang out to play games, and
that's smart.
They'll talk comics too because they have comics, but they only recently started getting comics again the last couple of years. They had comics like back in the 90s, and then when the bust happened, they just kind of sold off their back issues, and that was it. And now they're getting enough. They had enough requests for starting to get comics again, and they had so many requests actually, and it's this really cool story, local business succeeding, that they now can get into a service. And the other thing is they don't have a diamond contract. Their distributor is like a sub distributor that is local comics, like small comic shops in rural areas. So the big shop, they get books from Diamond, and so I get them 3 weeks to a month later than they're in the stores that Diamond gets. But I don't care because I get my Alterna books, I get my Antarctic books. I have the All Reds did an amazing Dick Tracy miniseries with IDW. Just like, I need more of this, and it was good stuff, man. But yeah, so I was I got them shipped to my little town, So
yeah,
they're able to do that because they're not going through Diamond, because they couldn't afford to order the volume that Diamond would require them to. So they can't make money going through Diamond.
Yeah, it's very predatory the way that Diamond has it set up. Like, you can't get the rare covers unless you buy a certain number of trash comics. So they make it so that the LCSs have to spend a lot of money in order to get the books that anyone actually wants.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a store owner, you can't return these books either. So you're buying a whole bunch of trash books that no one's going to want to buy, ends up in your dumpster, just so you can get a couple of gems that maybe are rare. Or maybe someone's going to want to buy. So a lot of LCSs are bleeding money just because through Diamond and Marvel especially is screwing people.
Yeah. That's why, I'm all on board with the theory of alternative distribution. We don't have enough product to sign up yet, but I'm hoping soon. We're working on the first part of a mini series, and we're hoping to get some stuff together in the next year so that 2021 we'll have a few titles we can do that with.
Yeah.
So hopefully. We do have a question from the chat that was asked about 20 minutes ago, so I'm not even sure if Star's still here. But, hey, I'm not trying to change the subject, but what do you guys think about direct-to-digital selling comics for cheap?
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you guys answer. What do you think?
I don't like digital comics.
Mm.
I mean, I'm old school. I read comics on my tablet through Comixology. You know, that's a good way to find stuff I can't get my hands on. But man, the printed word, the pictures in my hand, there's nothing to replicate that. It might just be because I'm getting old or whatever. But I will sell my comic digitally, but I really don't want to. I would rather print it. I'd rather, and that's what really sucks. I can get my books printed cheap and they're high quality. I mean, I was impressed when I got my book. But what the worst part of it is the shipping. If they could distribute it somehow, that would be amazing. But just, I don't prefer digital at all. That's just me.
Mm. Yeah, I was doing web comics for 10 years before I tried doing indie comics again. But those were comic strips. And I could never monetize them. I couldn't ever, like, I was asking people like hook me up with Patreon money and all that stuff. I tried this service called Webtoon for a while because I heard a lot of comic strip people are over there, but I was never able to turn it into enough money to be able to do it even part-time. I was just doing it whenever I could. And digital comics are convenient, but I don't think anyone, well, I'm not going to say anyone. There were a couple of guys like Scott, what's his name?
Kurtz.
Scott Kurtz. Yeah. Him and his buddies, like the Penny Arcade guys, for a while were able to do it through like merch and all kinds of like a weird alchemy of all kinds of different business practices. Penny Arcade released a lot of different videos and how-tos and of how they were running their business. It was really interesting to learn about. But yeah, Scott Kurtz was one of the pioneers with his comic PvP. And they were able to do things like selling T-shirts and doing prints of their collections and that sort of thing. So they were primarily digital, and then they went to print in order to sustain themselves. But for the most part, I don't think a lot of creators were able to monetize.
Well, and I think those guys, those early guys, they got lightning in a bottle. I mean, they were the right place, right time, in the right environment.
Yeah, it was a miracle. It would never happen again. But
and like I said, we've had comic on the web since 2006, right?
Yeah.
It never made any money on it. Now, we're small. It started out with just two writers who can't really draw, doing it because we have this story to tell, right? But webcomics are wildly popular, but they're not, money makers, and so they're a great hobby, and I think we still do it because it's a branch of our business, right? Our intended business is to say, here's a free story. To see more of this universe, to see more of this kind of stuff, if you think these concepts are intriguing, or if you want to see how a serious take on our silly stuff, then check this out.
Yeah.
But
we did discover something weird in the past few years with crowdfunding, though. As far as webcomics are concerned, too, like I've got this buddy, a webcomics buddy named Shenaniganson, that has hundreds of thousands of readers, and he's a webcomics guy. But I've been trying to tell him, like, if you were to run an Indiegogo campaign tomorrow, you would make hundreds of thousands of dollars just because everyone knows your name. Like, they're so popular, but for some reason they're working with publishers and it's driving me nuts. Like, there was another creator who I don't know personally named Sarah Anderson, who has millions of readers. And she's killing it right now. She has so many readers, but she's not going the indie route. She's working with publishers and agents and stuff. But it's driving me nuts because there can be the biggest indie renaissance right now, and we're so close to it. And the guys that we know who are crowdfunding on Indiegogo and stuff like that, we're close to it. We're kind of touching on it, but none of us have the millions of readers that these webcomics people do. But it's very strange. We're so close to the crowdfunding is one of the biggest answers. Like, unfortunately, we're bypassing people like LCSs that can be good partners for us. Like, a good LCS will recommend your book and encourage sales. So
that's one of the things that I think about with the issue too, though, is that like It's something I've seen like Peter talk about. Um, Crowdfunding is a good proof of concept, but if you can pay for the production of the book, then you can look at distribution as a second level and have a whole secondary market.
Yes.
And James Dean Anderson was on the show about 4 months ago, and that's one of the things he talked about was that he wanted his campaign to be an entry level thing, so that people are not just buying a book; they're investing in the next stage. That next stage is broadening that market base by getting into shops, getting it into different distribution formats, and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's one of the elements to all of that. But the thing that gets me frustrating is so many of the people that have been really successful crowdfunding, they're like, this is the model, this is all we'll ever need.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, that seems really sad.
It's not smart. If you make all that money, and especially if you're your own artist, like George, you can write and draw your own book. I can't.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to raise that money to pay the artist. Yeah. But if you make all that money, it's dumb to keep crowdfunding. Like you're saying, Matt, invest in distributing the book somehow. If you made $200,000, then you shouldn't be crowdfunding your next book. To print it. You should have a stream of books ready to go. And you should take all that money and invest it into building your brand and producing books. Just people are so burnt out on crowdfunding. I don't even want to crowdfund my next book. Luckily, I have a really cool artist who, my first book was a success for me. I didn't make no six figures or whatever, but I got the book funded. So we're going to work together, and whatever we make, that's what we make, because we both have day jobs. Because this is this is a passion project for us. So I don't have to worry about that. So maybe I can skip crowdfunding altogether and just make the book. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think everybody should be shooting for.
Yeah, there's things like, I guess you could sort of treat it like pre-ordering in some ways, instead of crowdfunding. Like, what I'm trying to do with this project is, I guess we've got to sort of, the whole campaign is like, here's what you'll get. This is a big promise. And then whoever wants one, it's like they're pre-ordering the book. And what I really need to know is, after they get their books, do they like it? And then in the future, what I'd like to do is, again, I have to do the pre-orders thing, unfortunately, because in order to get the money to even print the books, I need to have money to spend. So I need to make sure that people want the book before I spend thousands and thousands on printing and all that stuff.
Right.
The only thing I can
guarantee you, when you print your book, people are going to like it, unless your book absolutely sucks, which, from what I've seen, is not the case. There's some really awful books out there right now. I'm not going to mention any names, but there's some really awful books that have made tons and tons of money based off of hype. And trust me, if you've got a good book, it'll just build from there. And I believe in you. I think you've got a really good looking book.
I try. Thank you, man. I think the real proof of the pudding is, like, do sales go up or down with issues 2, 3, 4, and so on?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of these books are coming out pretty slowly, so we can't know the results of that test until later this year, let's say. But in order for me to even survive, I need to get my next campaign going before the holidays, or I may as well not do it, because nobody spends money in January, I've heard. Because the holidays, everyone spends their money for Christmas and stuff. So I have to hustle super hard, because my books need to ship before Thanksgiving, let's say. And then I need to make sure that the next campaign's going before Christmas is over, because I'm assuming we're not going to get any sales in January.
I'm going to be a little salty here. Just do like everybody else and just go ahead and start your next campaign.
I know, right? Well, actually, I've been flirting with the idea of doing a Kickstarter.
Go for it, man. That's what I did. I ran my Indiegogo. My Indiegogo is still up, but I offered a Kickstarter with an alternate cover and funded that.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing is Kickstarter wants like an exclusive. So if you wanted to run a variant cover or whatever on Kickstarter, they would totally let you do it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll probably, if it looks like I'm going to run late, that's going to be my only way to make it through the holidays. So I might have to do that instead. But yeah, it all really depends on, do people want more? So any creator, like we talk about other creators who are only putting out a few books a year and the quality is kind of there was a lot of excitement that I don't think is there anymore. And next year is going to be the real, it's not a bubble exactly that's going to pop, but I think the real numbers are going to show up next year.
And see, and this is the thing that's really frustrating to me about like a lot of the, I'm just going to say a lot of the Comicsgate aspect of things. Like people have got so caught up in the emotionality of being part of a movement that they didn't observe. There were lots of Johnny Come Latelys to stuff. Didn't observe that the issues that people were having problems with in mainstream comics have been going on for 20 years, right? Like as long as I have been an adult, this has been happening in the mainstream comics. DC and Marvel and selling their fans out, you know, starting back long. Marvel's whole move away from the newsstand was a betrayal of the trust of the customer, right? Because they said all those customers of the newsstand, they don't matter. Only the shops matter. Only those that want glossy paper matter. Only, you know. And so the if you didn't have the deep pockets, well, Marvel just wasn't for you anymore, right? Mm-hmm. DC just wasn't for you anymore. And then $4 a pop for 24 pages. My God, you know, it's not even a complete story, you know. And all that stuff's been going on for so long, and it was you know, people that are less cranky than me, right? That got frog boiled right out of it, you know. And so for all this stuff's going on, people got all caught up on the hype train, and then they find out that maybe some of the idols have clay feet, right? Instead of realizing that this is something that's going on for so long that it is a slog for any creator who's out there who's been working at it, you know. Mm-hmm. And this is going to sound ungracious because. Maybe because, you know, I've been, like I said, me and my little cadre of folks have been, you know, trying to do this since 2005. And, you know, we're not really successful at all. We've made books, we've published books. You know, we've had a very small group of fans who we've kept with for all this time. But, you know, I believe we've told stories that mattered and stories that were fun. And, but it's been a slog, you know. So it's something you just nose to the grindstone. You just do it. If you believe in it, you do it. Mm. And it doesn't have to come with great windfalls or come with great emotional. You don't have to feel wonderful doing it, because it's not about how you feel. It's about the worth of it. And I just really believe that. So I don't have a problem just, you know, going at it and struggling and fighting and, you know, spending up late nights coloring. You know, my comic and everything, because I believe in it, because I think it's true. I think it matters. Mm. And so a lot of people they caught up on like, oh, all of this drama and now I can't believe in anything anymore. Well, yeah, you can. Because it's not about the personalities that are making it. It's about the art itself. And that's me. That's my.
I agree with you. There's a lot of books that I think are being hyped as products. Like, hey, you like me as a person, so here's a product. It may as well be a T-shirt. But I'm an artsy fartsy type who loves the medium of comics so much that I will stay up, like you said, I'll stay up late. I'll do my weekends, whatever. I spent 10 years grinding away a webcomic just for my own pleasure. But then sometimes I think, like in the past year for me, when I got hooked up with everybody by accident, I heard, you know, about all the crowdfunding stuff. last year or back I guess 2018, you know, after The Last Jedi and everything and Cyberfrog and all that stuff and Zach and all that stuff with his books. And I was like, wait, crowdfunding is a thing. Maybe indie comics is making a huge comeback and I can come back and, you know, try this out as a thing. So sometimes like we can subsist doing other jobs as creators. And then sometimes the market's like, oh, we're coming back to life. Calling all creators, come and try out your latest book and let's see what we can do. And it's really going to depend on, is the market big enough? We certainly know that people want to spend a lot of money on these books if they're good. But that's, let's say, an audience of a few thousand people max. What we need is tens of thousands of people more to be able to spend smaller amounts of money on a book that can allow creators to make a living so that they can make more books. And then we have some momentum. Right now, we're trying to ignite this engine and it's kind of catching and then it kind of collapses again. So what we're trying to do these past couple of years is seeing if the marketplace is big enough. Maybe Peter knows more than I do, but like, is the marketplace big enough to sustain creators like back in the Image days before they exploded or imploded, I should say.
Yeah.
But I hear Image fell apart because of infighting, not necessarily because they flooded the market.
Well, I think there are lots of factors that go with Image. I think infighting is a big factor. I think they flooded the market with products that didn't retain value.
Yeah.
A lot of it was built upon this speculative idea. This idea that, oh, this will be worth whatever, and then that clearly didn't happen.
Some of the same stuff that's going on with these crowdfunded books, you mean?
Oh, could be.
This is going to be worth so much money, buy it, and then you can't get rid of it on eBay.
Speculation.
But
yeah.
One thing I wanted to say is, we were talking about a few minutes ago, I believe this coming year will show, with crowdfunding and everything else, indie comics, it'll really show who's in it to win it, because we'll see these guys, it's taken a year and a half or whatever. People are going to get tired of giving them money.
Well, and I think one of the things you got to realize that people keep talking about, I'm not a big manga fan, right? It's just not my thing. It's not like I have a problem with it. It's just I've never seen anything that's just like so enthralled me. I have to seek it out, right? I mean, I really, really, really do want to read through Alita, but like to get physical copy in my hand is ridiculously expensive now because they only do the prestige big giant things.
Yeah, $30.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. But I mean, but on the whole, it isn't. But one of the things but on the whole, manga is not something that's captured my imagination, for various reasons. And a lot of that's because I'm an old school DC Comics, newsprint loving. That's that part of what I love about Alterna is that it feels like reading an old book, even though they're not irrelevant and got all kinds of stuff. It just feels right. But with that, back to my point though, we live in a world where manga are vastly more popular than American comics, and I think some of that's cost of entry. But the other fact of it is those mangaka produce so much so fast that they can sate the market for that, and I don't think you're going to get a comic that takes 6 months to produce can't compete with somebody that produces the same level of enjoyment in a week and a half.
Yeah, manga versus American, Western, I guess, production is such a fascinating subject. In Japan, of course, they work in black and white, so that takes less time to render a page, and they also have less detail per page. Most manga, and they have an assistant production system instead of the assembly line system here in the West with penciler, inker, colorist, all that stuff. But they produce way more story. Well, they produce more pages, but the amount of story per page in Japan is far less than an American page. American pages are very dense.
Well, I think they used to be. I don't think we always get that density.
Not
And
anymore.
one of the fallbacks of I think that's one of the reasons Image on lasting effect they had on the comic is like when I was a kid, it used to take me 20 minutes to read a comic, a big two comic, and now it's like 5.
Uh-huh.
There's so little, and I don't read work that much better than I did when I was 17. I arguably read much slower than I did when I was 17, right? Because I'm 41. Anyway, but I think one of the things you have is that there's so much more decompression, and they're writing for the trade, not writing for the issue.
Well, some of these guys' problem is they can't write at all, and like I said, dude, I'm sorry, I'm extra salty. Used to, I was like, I won't say nothing and all this stuff, but I'm seeing so many indie guys who have day jobs. They're out there working 8, 12 hours a day, working their butt off, scraping together pennies to pay artists or they're an artist, whatever, and they're better writers, they're better storytellers than people that claim to be professionals. They make better products of higher quality, and so I'm just salty now. One group that I think, like we were talking a little while ago, the Something Real guys. They're on their 3rd book. Well, no, is it 3rd or 4th? I can't remember. I've got them all somewhere. But anyways, with every book, they're building more and more people. I think their last campaign was their most successful, but it's going to take them a while. But they've got a good product that tells a really good story, and it's got good artwork in it. But I know that one thing, George, I know you're trying to. That's what you do for a living. So I can't comprehend where you're coming from, because I'm just some dude that works 9 to 5. So I can do this a lot differently than somebody that's trying to pay their bills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was for me. It was, how do I put this? Before I was doing this, I was a freelancer working in games development, indie games development. So I was doing contracting work. So I was forced into a position where I could not do that anymore. If anyone's listening, or you guys know, like, the reason I came to CG in the first place was because I had some problems on Reddit. And
I've heard about it, but not in detail.
Well, long story short was I produced a series of comic strips that I put up on the r/comics page. And one of them, a series of 5, let's say. One of them, number 3, got voted up to the number 1 highest rated comic of all time on the website. And what ended up happening, unfortunately, was that led to them coming to my Twitter and scrutinizing me and realizing that I'm not like a super liberal lefty, whatever. And then the next comic I did by accident, they interpreted a hand signal that I put in as it was called the hand circle game, which is, if you look at it, I get to punch you in the shoulder.
Yeah,
played
in high school.
Yeah,
I'm very familiar with that.
So they misinterpreted it as the OK hand symbol, and what that meant to them was a guy got himself voted to number 1, and then he flashed a dog whistle to the whole internet. And unfortunately, what that meant for me was my full character assassination in front of the entire internet for like 3 days. And so I was like, that's it. All of my work that I've ever gotten has been on Reddit and stuff like that. So people were following me around, trying to dox me, all kinds of creepy crap. And so I was like, oh, that's it. My career's over. And so for 2 months after that, I think that was in December, late December, I was floating around, and I happened to jump on one of Ethan's streams, and I was like, hey, can I tell my story? And I did. And then I got to meet everybody, and I thought CG was cool. I was watching some CG channels and stuff. I thought everything was cool. I thought it was a fun community. And little did I know that there was all this like toxic waste building up for a year.
Underbelly.
Right. So I get ejected from Reddit thinking my career's over. And then 3 months later, I get ejected, or I eject myself from CG because I'm like, holy crap, I don't want to get to know any of these people. They're creeps. Not later, I learned who was who. Right. But like, at the time I was like, what the hell have I fallen into again? My career's over again. And so anyway, long story short is I launched Mary Sue thinking like, this is it. Either I'm quitting comics altogether or I'm going to give this everything I've got, which so far it seems to be working. Who knows what's going to happen next, but like, I'm fully willing to like get another job after this. I have to, but if Mary Sue works, fine. If not, I have to change careers and I'll just draw comics on the side. I'm sorry, that was such a long story.
No, man, I kind of heard it here and there, but everybody needs to know this, that you're secretly a Nazi. We needed to know that. No, but I mean, dude, you've got talent, and I believe in the end, this woke crap is apparently I'm the leader of the show now, but this woke crap it's on its way out. It's taken a while. If you look at the TV shows that's going on, like all the DC shows, people are tuning it out. People's tired of it.
Yeah.
Only the media is pushing this woke garbage, and we see how those people act. They're a minority, but they're bullies and they're jerks. You've got a fantastic looking book. You've got a ton of talent, and so I honestly believe from here on out, that you've got nowhere to go but up, man. I honestly believe that.
Man, you'll make me cry. Thanks. We'll see. I'm not gonna count my chickens before they hatch. I just gotta keep my head down and keep working. That's all.
Yeah. But man, the hard work will pay off.
I hope so.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird now because Reese is gone, so I don't know what to do.
Well, that's all right. We could just keep talking. I guess, should we give him a certain amount of time? Are we still streaming?
Yeah, we're still live. Oh, there he is. He's back.
Oh!
All right.
I took over the show and was flashing Nazi hand signals and everything while you were gone.
So I had lost my connection at my house. My thing just power cycled. So I'm back.
Looks like we're still going, eh?
Yeah, indeed. So the last thing I had heard, actually I don't remember, but I will say, that whole okay thing, it boggles my mind beyond comprehension that that's a thing, when that's like the most obvious troll in the history of the universe.
Yeah.
Well, I even saw one recently for the peace sign. Did you see that?
Yeah. And it's like 4chan just like incepting the world. How people are falling for it. It's honestly like, I can't even believe that anybody would buy that.
We need to descend further into clown world in order to make everyone realize how stupid all of this is.
Oh my God.
It's the only way to snap people out of it.
I tell you what. Well,
I believe that there's been some kind of huge event that happened, and a lot of us normal thinking people, the normies as we're called, we're actually from an alternate dimension, and we've been transported to clown world. And so that's why it blows and boggles our mind. But it's always been that way here. We're new.
That's actually that is actually the plot of the I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was the story that introduced Young Justice. It was Justice League World Without Grown-Ups. So yeah, I just reread that recently because my kids were interested about Young Justice when Bendis was getting ready to release the new series. Because it was the old team, and I love that series, and it broke my heart because I don't know, we should lock Bendis up in a room and take away his typewriter. Anyway.
Somebody in the chat says, "Don't listen to Doug." That's the worst advice I've ever seen in my life. You should always listen to me.
Back to Matt's question earlier, and Matt had to leave, so maybe he'll catch the replay about the digital. Well, actually, wasn't Matt's question; it was Claire's question about the digital thing. I think there's a room for direct to digital publishing. In fact, I know we had some comics that were up on Comic Central, but of course they're going away.
Mhm.
I think we're probably planning on doing something to have that option for people,
Mhm.
but I don't think that's sustainable to. Yeah, that's also true. I don't think that's sustainable for a company. I think that's a way to make a little scratch. And I think you look at like when Rags got going with their product, that was the first digital was the option they had, and they had quite a few people that got excited about what they were doing because of the digital production.
Mm.
But that wasn't the end of the road with that. So I don't think I think that digital can be an important arm, but I don't think you're going to get the full experience in that. I don't think digital has some stuff like infinite canvas and things like that like webcomics have that traditional comics don't. That's fun and can be useful. You can incorporate like animated GIFs into your webcomics and things like that that can be change up the way a comic works. But at the same time, excuse me. But at the same time, you're not. It's the. I don't think that's an answer. I know a lot of people are pointing to the idea that digital is the future as an answer, and I just don't think it is. I think that the fact that people like to have things and own things and continue to possess them whether they're online or not, I think is going to be a factor in that. But I think that digital can be an important aspect of it.
It's one of the many products you could offer, I think, but people digitally aren't used to spending money for comics. I don't think
Well,
manga.
I mean, well, I think like one of the somebody brought up the other day the idea that with the services that they have, the digital streaming services that Disney is doing and that Warner Brothers is doing, the idea that those could be done through a streaming service in the same way that Comixology does, and you could purchase a Marvel Unlimited through your Disney Direct service. I think that's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've known people that do that, but I don't think that's an industry saving thing. I think that's an ancillary thing.
It can be one of the products. Like,
Exactly.
For instance, one of the things that I'm planning to do for the next campaign for Mary Sue is to not exactly do a newsprint version, but to print a cheaper version. I've looked into ways to print very, very cheaply, and I can offer a premium edition if people want to still pay for the higher version. Like, I can put gold leaf on it and make it really pretty and stuff. But I can have like a basic, not exactly newsprint, but the cheapo versions. So I've been trying, like, price is the thing I think stopping most of us. I think I could have doubled my sales if the book was more affordable. And people want to buy a physical thing, I think. So somewhere in all of this is an experiment that I think is going to eventually pay off, where people are able to mail order, or like, for instance, if they have a LCS that they want to buy my book through, they could just tell the LCS to like email me or something, or I can get in touch with them. I'll send all my books to them and they can sell as many as they want.
I think that direct to consumer avenue is, I think, an interesting one. One idea that I've had, and people have talked about it. I don't. Other people have had similar ideas, and like, oh, I don't want to let this secret out there. I don't care, because I'm obviously don't care about money. But a network of printers that can produce a comic, because the technology to produce comics is getting more and more accessible, right? As far as printing technology.
Yeah.
There was a network of maker spaces that could produce a comic remotely. Somebody buys the file from you, right? Or you print it locally. You don't have to have the shipping. You just go into your local comic maker space and you order it, you pay for it, and then they print it out for you the next day. Kind of how Amazon does with facsimile versions of books out of print. Used to be out of print books. I've bought a bunch of old facsimile versions that paid for $10 for a book that to get an older printing would cost me $45. I can get a facsimile version that Amazon prints off a robot in Kentucky prints it off and mails it to me. You know,
Yeah.
like that with comics could exist, and really bring down that cost of production a lot.
We're getting close to it, I think. The next 2 years, I would say, is going to determine if this is something that's sustainable or just a pipe dream. But the thing I think that's actually holding everybody back, some people alluded to this before, I can't remember where, is the community itself, I think, is going to make or break this as a dream. So there's a lot of like attitude problems and like the books, whatever. We need to have more books. That's a given. We also need to court more talent. I think there's a lot of people who are aware of the group that we have, but they don't want to get anywhere near it because like we don't know how to like.
I wonder why ever would people not want to surround themselves with.
I don't even want to be near this group.
Yeah, I hate all of you.
It's really weird. It's really strange, and I don't know what's going to happen in the next year or so.
Well, I don't know. I think a big factor. I don't know, man. I keep going, and this is one of those things. Like I was talking politics, broad sense earlier, because we are dealing with, and you were talking about in your video about cults, the idea that everyone's an alpha, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you can have a first of all, I mean, acknowledge there's some truth to that paradigm that people tend to organize themselves in hierarchies, but I think it's perfectly reasonable to also reject that paradigm too, because we're not bound to each other like a pack. We can have free associations and fold in and out of our associations without having any kind of overarching devotion to the cause, right? And I think it's silly for people to hook themselves into believing that. I think it's silly to hook themselves or tie themselves to a credo that they don't have any control over and mindlessly take cues from anyone. And that's like I got into a discussion a couple weeks ago, and this is going to be a little faux pas. But I got in conversation a couple weeks ago with somebody online, and I was saying that I think that the movement was derailed, so to speak. And somebody's like, "I really think that it could be derailed." And I said, "Dude, the minute somebody claims to be your king and you don't tell them to just screw off, you have a problem." the fact that somebody could claim to be the Caesar of anything and not just be laughed off the face of the internet demonstrates that there's a bunch of weak-willed, easily led people involved. And I just that's crazy to me that a customer service movement matters, right? Because the customer matters. But the customer doesn't matter as a monolith. The customer matters as an individual because he controls his money. That's the underlying philosophical assumption of customer movements. The consumer holds the power over the purse.
Yeah.
Well, so you don't insult the consumer because then they're not going to give you your money. Okay. That assumes individual autonomy. But and that's a good question too. So you can't have a movement that is built on autonomy suddenly be some sort of group identity thing, or and I think a lot of people don't think about things in those terms and don't like to break things down, and I waver back and forth whether this apolitical language was forwarded to dilute the philosophical implications of individualism or not. That may be conspiratorial thinking on my part. I don't know.
Well, what you really have is, I hate to use the word community, but I can't think of any better word right now. You have a group of people who all just they have a common set of loose beliefs. It was never written down. It was never agreed upon. It's very much like the old United States back when it was 13 states and every state was its own thing. And we all are just going to make our own rules, but we're just kind of on the same team, right? And then someone comes along and says, well, I'm going to unite all of these states, but I'm going to be the king. And I have a group of enforcers who's going to go after anyone who disagrees. And then slowly you notice that all these people in the group start vanishing. People who were talented, capable creators, and lots of fans whose names we'll never know because they just vanish and never hear from them again. Why is it that we have this group of people who used to be so, as far as I know, like I came in 2 years ago, let's say, as a fan, and then all of a sudden everyone just starts vanishing? But if you ask, which I've done, most of the people who have left, why they left, and one name keeps popping up, like I say, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern. What happens when it's 10 times?
Yeah. Yep.
This is a problem, and no one has the guts to say anything about it.
Well, and I think part of it is, I think part of why we see, and this is another side note of all of this, is that, you know, in the last month there's been this outcry. Why can't we all just get together? And everything's gotten so divisive within the community lately.
Yeah.
And I don't shy away from community because it's just how people organize themselves. You know, just like I'm not an anarchist because anarchy is impossible, because somebody will always, will always pick a leader, will always develop a government. Human beings just will. Government's inevitable.
Yeah.
I'm not an anarchist. In the same way, communities just form. It's an organic part of who we are as human beings. But people talk about there's all this division in the community and everything, and here's when it started. I'm like, dude, it's not recent. This has been going on since Father's Day 2018. I know the exact moment that it happened. I was watching it happen live, and it took me about 6 months to realize what had happened. But I watched it happen, and there was a break, and I know who, and a particular Jersey fellow started it. one of your compatriots there in the city of the devils, state of the devils, cracked it on purpose. I watched it happen.
What happened? I was not there for that.
I was.
Are you comfortable saying?
But it took me 6 months to happen, to watch it happen. Okay, so one of the things that had happened is the first Comicsgate Live. It was the Father's Day weekend, that thing. And previously, Ethan, who had just barely joined officially when his contract with DC had ended in February, so he was very new to all of this stuff. The community and the stuff been going on the internet 2 years before easily, and then there had been, pretty much been called Comicsgate for about a year and a half at that point, and but it had been happening back on the message boards back in 2008, and for quite a long time. But Tim had gotten the contract for My Hero Macadamia, Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini, and they were starting to do their press for it. And at the same time, there were some other Trump parody books that were out there. And somebody asked Ethan if he thought those could count as a Comicsgate because they're political. Because the byword from some of the online commentators had been like, we don't want politics in books.
Okay.
Which is a stupid thing to say, because it misunderstands the entire nature of politics. Right? Every story is political because it's about people, and people in groups are politics. It's just how it works. But what you don't want is propaganda. You don't want to be demeaned because of your beliefs. You don't want not politics. Anyway, that's pedantic on my part. But and Ethan had gone, and started saying, this can't be part of the community. It can't be, catered to a Comicsgate crowd, but this had caused all this unease, right? So, so Ethan had suggested everybody get together for a big powwow where they can hash all their differences out. And so, so Tim came up and he's like, you've been bad mouthing me, and I don't like it. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I don't see. I can't imagine that I never said anything. And Doug Ernst says, no, you got to sit down and listen to him because Tim has something important to say. And so Tim reads off. He had taken a transcript of one of the basically bitch sessions that Ethan had about how we can't tell stories about politics because we're a non-political entity.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim's like, this is my book. It's satire. I'm not telling people they're bad people because they like Trump or don't like Trump. It's just jokes.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes Trump look like a hero because it's a pastiche of My Hero Academia. And if we didn't do that, it wouldn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
And Ethan says, oh, I feel like Caesar, like everybody is gathered around me to stab me in the back. And that was the moment right there. And then he went on for the next, and then so Doug says, well, we should define, if we're gonna be all together, we need to spend the time defining what we're talking about so that we're not crossing paths. And Malin and Ethan got up. No, we can't define it. Defining things as soy. We're not those kind of people. We're about openness and accepting everybody, and we're not going to exclude people.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of thing is just soy. It's soy. And so for the next 6 months, Ethan goes between talking about how it's not political and we can't have politics at all, apolitical books, and we can't define Comicsgate, but we have to define Comicsgate. I'm waffling back and forth between those positions, and that was it, though. I mean, that was
Didn't Ethan left Comicsgate for a little while? Was that a
yes? Yeah, after the Nurkish thing.
So Tim Lim was first, then it was Nurkish.
Well, then JDA actually. That was a whole thing. Because that's a whole. Yeah.
it's a long.
I'm sorry to ask. I've heard this story so many times from like everyone has a little piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
So someday I've got to talk to like the lore master, whoever's knows the full story. But just as a piece of comics history, indie comics history, I find this movement fascinating. Like I'm trying to look at it as an archaeologist, even though it's happening in real time.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the personality vortex that has both brought it to life and is destroying it in real time.
See, and here's part of the thing where I point to that event specifically. There was some weird stuff before that with when Zach lost his contract with Antarctic.
Yes.
And Tim and the Rags guys caught a lot of flack because they wouldn't leave Antarctic, and there were people calling for them to do that. But I really feel like that was kind of on the mend before this event happened.
I see.
This event happened. That was about the time that Mike Miller came forward. And then just a couple months later, Doug TenNapel came forward. And in the middle of all of that, starting in July, there was the first huge push toward purity testing, and and then like a bunch of people got caught in the middle of all of that.
Uh-huh.
And where you shouldn't support your book because you won't come out as Comicsgate, and it cost us something to come out as Comicsgate, so we don't have any respect for you if you won't do what we've done.
I see.
Just like stupid little stuff, and and my thing is the thing that is Comicsgate, right? That the consumer focused, the love of the hero's story, the traditionalist idea of what comics can be, right? All stems from these things that have been going on for 20, 25 years within comics, right? that I was talking about, like all that stuff that's going way, way back in the day. In fact, in some ways, maybe even back to Kingdom Come, right? I think that may have been a pivotal moment in the destruction of the DC mythos, anyway. Which I've got a, if that intrigues you, I did a whole half hour with, or a whole hour with Pope Fire talking about Kingdom Come about 9 months ago.
Mm.
It's in the archive. But yeah, and she disagrees with me, which is fine. We had a really good talk. But with that, a lot of these old themes that have been going on. So Comicsgate was only ever a moment in a larger issue that was happening with what comics could be, should be, can be. What is the position, the relationship between the creator and the patrons? What is the nature of heroism? What is truth? Can truth be itemized and discussed, or is it just an imagination?
Mm-hmm.
And those are the fundamental bedrock questions that are behind all of this stuff, because heroism presumes truth, and so that's a big part of all that. But those conversations are important ones, but we got derailed with purity testing so that people can't actually ask those questions, because it became about the cause instead of actually what the issues were at play.
Yeah.
And it became, and that's the thing, is that live stream was the creation of the identity, I really believe, where it stopped being a concept, a creed, and began to be an identity. And it's followed all of the same issues as identity politics in every other form, because it's been about identity, not about. And I was talking about to point back to what I was talking before. As thinking people, and I think everybody should be a thinking person, but as thinking people, we have to divorce our opinions of truth from truth, and know that it's something that is outside of us, that we are striving toward internalizing and becoming part of us, but it's not part of us natively, right? It is something external to us. And so with that, I think that we've weakened the conversation by making CG an identity that you can be part of it, and that's the whole thing. And that of course crosses politics, philosophy, religion, all of those boundaries in that statement, and I know that, but there we go. That's it.
It has always been, in my opinion, there's a danger in even saying in my opinion. It's just a name, and names are low resolution representations of ideas. These packages, everyone has a different idea of what Comicsgate is supposed to be. Fine. Like, I could even consider myself Comicsgate now, even though I reject the name. I follow all of the rules of this stupid thing called Comicsgate that has been destroyed and chewed up and turned into something it's not supposed to be. I still do I am the poster boy for Comicsgate after what happened to me on Reddit, let's say. Like, I am the candidate. But why then do a bunch of people get to tell me that I can't be, or I'm not, or that they are? But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that, like, what's this stupid idea of you have to adopt the name to be a part of this community, and there are people who get to say who is and is not? Like, it's like the same thing with Christianity to me. Like, I don't have to be a part of a church to be a Christian, let's say. Of course, comics is a different thing than a religion, but like, what's this stupid thing of like, you have to be a part of the club? You're excluding people because they don't even understand what this movement is. You're not letting new people in because there's this group of people, I'll never get over this, a group of people who are pretending to be like, you have to get through us to get in the club. Who the person you're trying? Who the F do you think you are? Like, who gave you power? And who gave him power to give you power? Like, I'm not allowing you to tell me what I am and am not. I'm going to make comics without your permission.
See, and that's what gets me. And I've talked really briefly to some of the other indie creators that I'm associated with, and that was, why are we indie to begin with, right? It's because I wasn't going to let somebody tell me I couldn't make a damn comic book.
That's right.
And I don't care. I I mean, it was like I said, when we started Ideal Comics, it was me and my buddy Chris, and we were both writers, and we had sent out our pitches, and we gotten rejection letters back. After doing that for a year, Chris says to me, "We should just self-publish," and I said, "We can't draw," and he said, "I don't think that should stop us."
Yeah.
And he pitched out a scheme about ways we could possibly make it work financially, and we went with it, and we've been working with the zero capital scheme since then, and it's paid off really well. No, but I mean, we've been making comics though, and even though, and we've had other people come alongside us, Barry and our buddy Rolf and my son Taliesin, who's a very good artist for being 16. He's way better than I am at 41. I'll tell you that right now. But we've had people come along that just believe, and Rico, who just believe in making comics and have bought into our universe, and so that's what we're doing. We're just to keep doing it and not letting somebody tell us we can't. The only people we're trying to impress are the readers. I'm not interested in impressing a board of directors. I am the goddamn board of directors. You know what I mean? And and that's it. I just want to have the end of the day, have somebody take a look at my stupid joke and laugh at it, or think that's a really cool costume, and that's it. I mean, and hopefully tell something that approaches or that direction of that truth that I believe is out there.
Well, why shouldn't we be able to, for instance, what they're trying to do is prevent new people from accessing the existing audience, let's say. Mm-hmm. I don't even want to use the CG term anymore because it's broken. But like, if I'm a new guy and I come into this group and say, hey guys, I'm an indie creator and I just want to make a book to make everyone happy and sell books to people, right? Then they come out with this story, which is plausible, but it's also very insidious of like, we can't just let anyone in this group, because what if they collect names of our members and start doxing people?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, because I've been tribunaled by these motherfuckers. And what they tried to do, because somebody was already trying to, the reason I got tribunaled was because of Brad. And Brad Ashworth, if anyone's curious. And what they were trying to pin on him that
he's a good guy.
Brad's the man. Like, he was the nicest, sweetest dude. And the reason that he got in trouble, and anyway, it doesn't matter. Long story.
Yeah.
But like, they were trying to pin this narrative of anyone, if people are trying to infiltrate Comicsgate, they were trying to say. And when they do, they're going to get a list of all the people who buy your books, and they're going to give away people's addresses and all kinds of creepy stuff. It's plausible, but who's to say that later I find out that these guys are also keeping records of this nature, and they're trying to pin this narrative on all kinds of different people that are like, I've never even heard of half of these people. But like, I'm just a guy trying to make a book. You're telling me that I'm not allowed to have access to your group, or just like to say, hey, I'm a creator, I have a book to sell.
I'll tell you what happened to me. I decided, I thought all these guys were great. I thought they were fantastic people. I watched their live streams. I was like, oh man, I want to do this. They were such a big influence on me. So, I get my story together, make my book, and some friends I made asked one of the big shots to let me on their little show they would do every once in a while, to throw people a bone and make them think that they actually cared. Well, the guy, we're supposed to go on at like 7 o'clock on a Sunday night. At 6:59, he sends me the link. I pop in. He's like, okay, so what's your project? Never bothered to look at it. I sent him the link. He sits for 15 minutes and just rips everything to shreds. It's not constructive criticism in any way. And mind you, this man draws rectangles and pretends they're guns. Just so, you need to know. But he just said and just told me how I was going to fail, that everything sucked, and I should have hired him as an artist, that I should have gave him $1,000 to draw a cover so my book would succeed. Then we go on the show, and he ignores me for 20 minutes while he talks about drama, then chimes in and tells me that I need to be more that I need to talk more, and that I'm not a very good salesman of my book. Then he ripped my book apart during his stream. So anybody who might have been interested in it, definitely not interested in the book. Then later on, I go and I keep it all to myself. Well, come to find out, he's done this to everybody that's been on the show. He's trying to discourage all the new guys. He don't want the new guys taking his money. He wants all the money for himself. But, it goes a couple months down the road. I went on Doug Naples' show. He promoted my book, was really good, was really nice to me. So my book gets funded. And so I go through and I'm thanking everybody, thank you for letting me do this, blah, blah, blah. Well, I didn't thank the guy who was a huge jerk to me. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to say that he was a huge jerk, wasn't going to bring it up. I just thought, well, we'll leave it out. Somebody goes, well, what about him? You were on his show. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't get any referrals on Indiegogo, so I didn't think to include him. Mm-hmm. So here he comes to that response on Twitter and rips me apart and continues to tag all of Comicsgate in it so they can come in and rip me apart.
Mm-hmm. See, and here's the thing. One of the things we're talking about, the quality of a person, right? And the idea, I'm not talking in terms of like value. I mean, in terms of like acting appropriately. Right? The person that says, oh, you can't do that, versus the person that says anybody can do this. You just have to try really, really hard. Who do you think's acting out of selfish motives? It's not the person that says follow your dreams and get good.
Well, where I was going with the rest of my story was where I disagreed with this guy, and he got all of Comicsgate to come after me. I suddenly became an agent of Vox Day, apparently, and I was gathering all I was there to do was to gather everybody's information and give it to Vox Day so he could expose everybody because I was an SJW. And on their little streams there, they let a guy come on and rant about me. Now they say I'm a doxer and all this crap. And but all my customers, I sold 300 books. I'm a complete nobody who did whatever I ever wanted to. And, nobody's going to tell me what I can or can't do, especially some guy who can't draw guns. I sold 300 books. I'm a nobody. And I know 300 is not anything spectacular in the grand scheme of things. But for me, it's freaking amazing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry for that long story there.
How interesting that they pinned that. Was there a reason they picked Vox Day, or was he just the villain of the week?
He was the villain of the week because him and Ethan were big buddies. Well, they made this whole plan to make a Comicsgate comic book label. Well, some guy, some subset decided that Vox Day was a racist because that's what's going around. I don't know anything about Vox Day other than what everybody says. So Ethan cuts ties with Vox Day, stream snipes him, runs him down, talks bad about him. Well, apparently John De La Rose is friends with Vox Day. Well, John De La Rose bought my book. And since I wouldn't denounce a customer, I wouldn't just call out somebody who paid money for my product. I wouldn't denounce them. I was in league with them. I was, a secret agent there to dox everybody.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and like Vox, apparently he likes to say things that are offensive to get stupid people to stop talking to him. I'm not sure that's a winning strategy, but I also live in a tiny ancient house in West Nebraska, so what do I know, right? Although I love West Nebraska, you should live here. Live where you want. But that's so like Vox has said some fairly racist stuff, and from some of the stuff I've read, I think he does believe that doesn't necessarily think that the tribes of Earth will mix well. You know what I'm saying? Like that hostility is intrinsic upon our tribal history, and so It can't be overwrought. So I frankly think it's stupid. But I've never seen anyone. Yes, Star. Tim did have receipts. That's what I was.
Yeah, but from what we've seen, receipts don't matter. People, they're into cults of personality, and that's exactly
Yes,
the whole
yes,
thing.
they are. Well, I mean, they don't matter to some people. They do matter to others, and that's one of the things that if you ever hear anybody talking about, Edwin's great heel turn, um, that was a factor in that. Yeah, that was a factor in all of that. I don't want to speak for Edwin, but yeah, there's something about that. So, but yeah, that's and I don't want to get. We got pretty deep into the drama thing about that. I hate to. Um, I don't. It's not that I want to harp on that as an issue, because for me, it's not about who did what to whom, right? Like Doug, you didn't tell your story about who that jackass was. I have my suspicions, but I don't care, because it's not about. And I've mentioned a few names too, but it's not about the names, other than their historical context. For me, the bigger issue is the underlying philosophies and relationships that we have to what freedom is and what truth is. And like you said, nobody's going to tell. Nobody should have the right to tell you who you do or don't belong to and what you can or can't say and what you should do with your art. It's yours, for crying out loud. It's not theirs. They can do their thing, you can do your thing. And the whole point of the free market is you let the customers decide what they want.
Exactly.
It's like, like Doug with your one, you sold 300 copies of your first book, and that's awesome. I've sold 150 copies of my first book over 10 years, right? And in our last crowdfunding, our only crowdfunding we did, we made enough to get the books printed. We're the team's volunteering our time for it because we just really wanted people to see this story because we really believe in it. And with that, it's one of those, I think 20 books is what we have with it. We're going to print more than that because that's what makes the deal. But I mean, it's I don't care, right? If the market, if people like the book, they'll tell their friends, and when we, if we do another campaign for the second issue, then we'll sell some first ones too. Do another printing of it or whatever. And I'm not mad that you did really really well. You let the here you go. Doesn't the customer pick you though? Yes, exactly right. You let the customer pick you.
And
Well, my simple objection is that there is a group of people playing a game of King of the Hill,
Yes.
and it just so happens that they own the podium now. And they have said, well, the community now is going to listen to what we say is the narrative. They are restricting access, let's say. If they really were about indie comics, which they're not, they would try to bring in and promote as many indie comics as possible. You get a guy like Edwin, who was trying to make IndieCron open, even to people who were CG adjacent, let's say, and that was like a big naughty word at one point.
it's a nerd word. That's why.
Why wouldn't you want as many indie comics as possible so that everyone can get a shot at the community? The community wins, right? Because everyone can get as many comics as they want. And lots of creators can maybe earn a living at what they do. And then we can actually have a great adjacent market to the mainstream. That's not possible because there was a small group of people who want to be able to control everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
and it's just like the whole, that whole idea that, that they say, right wingers want more speech. They want people to keep talking. Because the more access you have to talk, the more your secret ideas come out. And I just want people to just keep talking, and then if we understand and forward this idea about what truth is and what reason is and what freedom is, and then the more people talk, the more they're going to see who lines up with that and not, and not that right wing, left wing, good or bad, but I'm saying I want more and more people to have access to the podiums. I want more and more people to talk, and if I get drowned out and I only sell 30 books because there's just people that are better than me at talking. Like, Crypto. He's so much better at pitching than I am. My God, it's a science. It's an art the way he does that. And I will never be able to have the kind of swagger he has pitching his project because I'm maybe I'm too close to it and I don't know what it is, but and he's awesome at it. If you ever hear him talk about his project or any other project he's talking, it's like a storyteller in front of a campfire. It's amazing.
I love the dude. I do. I talk to him all the time. But he's like a used car salesman. He makes everything. He's just like, and I'm like, hey, I've got this book. You might want it, but if you don't, I'll keep it. That's me. I'm not very forceful. That's just not me. I know it would help me a lot if I was like, hey, buy this. It's the best thing that's ever existed. But I feel dishonest saying that. Not that I don't have faith in my product, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been tricked too many times by people who try to say this is the best comic you'll ever read, or it's just the snake oil feeling of you need this book or you're going to die. It's like, no, it's fine. Most books are just okay, and that's fine. But why shouldn't as many people as possible get to see? Like, that's why I liked the Indie Crown project so much before there was an attempt of a takeover. Indie Crown was just going to list all the books that were up on Indiegogo and all that good stuff. It was such a good idea. And then for a little while, I don't want to get too into it because I'm sure you guys want to talk about other things or go to bed, but like there was this attempt at a takeover of Indie by the deep-seated people, the King of the Hill people at CG. They wanted to make it CG only and all that stuff. And I'm so curious to see what's going to happen with CG only. Like, I don't even know what's going to happen with that. But like, what is this idea of like, everyone has to go through these gates, the gatekeeper conversation and all that stuff. Anyway, I'm over it. But like, these past few weeks, for instance, or the past few days, like I'm just trying to like snap people out of this thinking of like, you have to listen to this group of people who will say, for instance, don't talk to Doug. You, Doug Garrett. Like there were people in a small group. I can't remember what the group was called, but like, hey, let's all be friends and promote each other. It was on Twitter. And then some jerk, I won't say his name, some jerk off from a certain group comes on and he's like, oh no, don't talk to Doug. He's a bad person. He doxes people. And I see this and I didn't say anything because I'm like, I don't know who's who in this group, but I'm like, holy shit, they're still trying to do character assassinations. Like, it's not enough for us to just like part ways and do our own thing independently of each other, right? They have to actually make people who have dirt on them, who can actually like for me, for instance, I don't know, it doesn't matter. Like, it would be in their interest to make me seem like a bad guy. Don't talk to George because he's going to tell you lies about us. He's a bad person. And all kinds of lies that they might say about me to like make it seem like just talking to me. And this is why I'm talking about like cults so much lately. Just talking to an outsider who's not in the cult, who's going to snap you out of it. That kind of person is going to make you sinful just by talking to them. It's very sick, kind of like there's something very actually creepy going on. And when I use the word cult, it's just a facsimile. It's hyperbole.
So, but here's one of the things that I get off on this, and this, you're talking about cults. Your video got me thinking about this too. Is the idea, and I was of course thinking about it in relationship to actual cults versus true religion, right? I believe true religion exists. I don't want to have
me too.
Now, I'd like to someday, but not right now. But it's like that. It's like they were talking about, Doug TenNapel. He says, do it, make your comic, get good at art, keep trying, get people to rip it apart, keep doing it. You can do it. I can do it. If I can do it, you can do it, right? Because this idea that attainable goals exist outside of Doug, right? So if people believe in truth, then the old cliche that the truth will out. You don't need to control the narrative because the truth will out, right? Because you can't. Nobody's good enough to lie forever. So the truth is eventually going to come out if people believe in truth. But if truth doesn't really exist, if it's just imaginary, If it's a falsehood, then then you have the right to control the narrative, and that's part of the because there's nothing to keep you from it because there's no such thing as truth, right? And that's the thing that gets me so crazy about people that are just like they gotta spin it, and like I can't even listen to some people. I can't even listen to him talk about history because every time he brings up the past, it's wrong.
Yeah.
There. And I mean, I made a goof earlier today talking about something, and Matt Tran was just like, "You're wrong." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Now I know something new. I like this."
Yeah.
I don't want to go around being wrong, so please tell me when I'm wrong so I can be right.
Well, what's great is the people you run into that can say that, and you'll think, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I am wrong. Me and Jeremy Lott had a huge discussion on Twitter a little while ago about Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was over, I said, "Have a good night," and went on my way. And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to unfollow Jeremy and be like, "I hate you because you don't agree with me." And Jeremy's going to dox people. Don't buy his book.
Mm-hmm.
The level. I think the biggest problem, and I hate to say this about a lot of these guys, is they're really low IQ. They're low IQ. They're looking for a father figure. There's somebody to pay them attention. They get on these YouTube channels and they send a super chat. Somebody reads their super chat. It makes them feel special. I got some attention from Uncle Daddy Man here on the YouTubes.
See, and I wouldn't even go the low IQ route with looking at it. I think there are, because people are of different intelligence and whatever else, but I think it's not a capacity. I think it's a skill issue. I think people are bad at thinking and they're lazy at thinking. I don't think it's that they can't think. And it's so easy to get emotional about a disagreement first, and when you get emotional, you don't think right, And so I think that for a lot of the people because you've seen me on Twitter, I actively engage people in argument. I step in the middle of things because I find where the orcs are and I jump in the middle of them in Raspberry, and or trolls, whatever. But because that's the kind of guy I am, I'm that guy. But with that, I think one of the things that comes to is that a lot of these people that if I can get them past just their anger response and get to actually have conversations, you can have an actual conversation with somebody about something, and sometimes they're not right. It's because they're really bad at thinking. It's not because they're lack the capacity. They haven't trained themselves to be critical of themselves and their own reasoning. They hold this idea that they're always right, and so then they can't be reasoned with because they're always right, because there's no questioning their assumptions about themselves.
I'll agree with you on that point, but there are some really low IQ people in that mix.
Well, yeah. So there's a spectrum of intelligence. Not everybody's me.
Well, what's worse about it is that it's spearheaded by a certain number of people who, I mean, I call it narcissistic personality disorder. It could be sociopathy, psychopathy. It could be any number of things. But there is a disease that seems to attract these people to each other, that when you get enough of them together, it creates this hurricane of it's the kind of group that took over Soviet Russia back when Stalin was around. They attract each other. Their power, their weird animal instinct takes over. It's like, wait, I found someone as psychotic as me, and they can create a paradise where I can do and say whatever I want. Reality is whatever I say it is.
Mm.
I've been following Ethan's channel for years, and I thought he was cool. I thought he was chill. And then I started to realize, wait, all this charm and charisma is the mask that he's wearing. And when you start to pick apart his personality, you realize things like he doesn't like criticism. He fights, his whole character is built, like the character that he's presenting is built so that he cannot be criticized. and anyone who does criticize him has to be basically thrown in thought jail or whatever it is. There is a fragile ego.
It's called dildo jail.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's so much to say about it. But what astounds me is how many people are willingly swallowing this pill to say, like, it's not even about comics anymore. It's about, some people say, cult of personality. Like, no one is allowed to criticize this man. And I don't even have to say his name. And people are like, why are you saying that about Ethan? I said, wait a second. First of all, why are you coming at me? Why are you coming at me on his behalf? Why does he need defending? Because now he has turned himself into a symbol. He has made it so that if he goes down, you guys go down as well. So there's a lot of weak-willed people. Doug, you say low IQ. It could be just a lack of will. Yeah. They don't have an identity. Yeah. But they have attached their identity to like a corrupt pastor at a church, let's say. That if he goes down, the church goes down. And if the church goes down, then I have nothing to do on Friday nights anymore. There's this sick thing happening in this community that I think most people are cool. They just want comics. But there's the true believers who will make puppets.
I think this actually comes back to something I was talking earlier, where like when people are like, well, what's been happening recently? It's gotten really ugly recently. And my point is like, hey, welcome to the party. This has been going on for a year, but
more
speaking out for you to notice. And now there are more people speaking out, and now you notice how ugly it is, because this is as ugly as it's been.
Good.
For those of us who like to jump in the middle of packs of orcs, it's been like I've been in the middle of this like since February, because I suggested snarkily, but I suggested that claiming to be a Caesar may not help your stated mission of bringing unity to the community. That just maybe that might rub people the wrong way, and my God, it was a really bad 4 days.
Yeah. Well, all we have to do, like our mission is, they're not beatable. Like you can't take apart a monolith like that or a pyramid. All you can do is show everyone what they are. So I keep saying this like privately to some people, but like the best thing Renfamous ever did was leaving CG alone.
Oh yeah.
That is how you destroy a group like this, because eventually the psychos come to power and destroy everything. And that's what happens with the social justice warriors, by the way. Maybe some of them had decent motives, but then the really, really crazy psychos come to power and say, no, we have to have more purity. We have to have more inquisitions. And then you end up with the Spanish Inquisition. Mm-hmm. That is what happens to groups like this. You get some people who have decent motives, and then the psychos climb the ladder, and everyone else is too polite to say anything. There have been a million opportunities for people throughout the past 2 years, I'm sure, to criticize Ethan before he came to power in his group. Nobody said a word, because everyone just wants to be chill and drama free. And the people who do speak get ostracized.
Well, and that's specifically what happened with Tim. Is it was he spoke up, and then little bunny Fufu bopped him on the head, and Tim's like, I can't deal with this. I got comics to make.
What bothers me is the people who are in the middle. They see the bad that's going on, but they put up with it because they're like, well, this is better than the SJWs, and it's like, no, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same kind of collectivist group thing.
You need to stop. They've got this weird concept of the greater good. I've been going on about that on Twitter for a few days. They want to fall in line because it's like, well, this is for the greater good. I'll keep my mouth shut because this is for the greater good.
It reminds me of, man, I shouldn't even say this.
Well, the thing is, and this comes back to my statement, and of course, it's part of my underlying philosophy, but there is only one greater good, right? And that's truth. And if you're being deceptive, this is why I don't want to get on everybody who uses a Twitter alias, because I know some people, they have a legitimate reason for it, or it's just a lark for them. But when people are like, oh, I'm going to make fun of your face, and I was like, this is my face. I'm not afraid of my face. I know I look like a Muppet. I'm aware that I'm a goofy looking son of a bitch. But that's not an argument about my point. No. I'm saying I own my truth, the truth of my humanity, and I'm not going to be running away from my frailed, broken, psoriatic self. This is who I am. This is where to find me, and I'm not afraid of that. But you don't even have enough pride in yourself to show yourself. You're some sort of phantom who doesn't even who is so dedicated to this thing they don't believe is real.
Mhm.
So it doesn't have any consequence to your life. You think you can be horrible to people online, and it's not you doing it; it's your persona. But I don't have a persona. I am exactly the flawed, broken, bad mouth son of a bitch that you see.
Well, they're trying to punish you for being yourself because they are ashamed of who they are.
Maybe
There's
I don't want to presume that, but it's possible.
people have anonymity for different reasons, but I think the people who are malevolent are doing it so that they can vanish and reappear, using another pseudonym or something like that. I have a very low tolerance for people who get snappy with me and then want to have their anonymity at the same time. I just block them.
Yeah.
I can't stand, I don't have time in my life anymore for this kind of bullshit. But I'm going to have to go soon. Is there any other things that we wanted to chat about, though?
Yeah, but not tonight.
All right.
I gotta have you back on again, George. This has been a lot of fun. A little salty, a lot salty, but a lot of fun.
Well, look, man, it's a cancer. Cancer requires surgery. So
Well, it's time for people to start talking about this stuff.
Well, and I think the one thing I guess in parting, I'm going to give you a parting shot and not give you enough time to respond to it. I do think that kind of groupthink can be beaten, but it's not like people think. You don't walk. I mean, it's not about winning arguments because you can't win an argument. But I really think that by being consistent and kind, occasionally you see somebody who wakes up and looks at themselves in the mirror and suddenly they realize they're an asshole, and you've seen that happen a couple times in the last couple months where there's been people that have been real bad players and they're like, what's the life I'm living? And those people, they end up lighting fires. And I think that's an important aspect about that, because you can't break the pyramid by smashing it with a hammer. I think you break it by letting water rot out the foundation. To use a real clumsy metaphor.
Yeah, that works. And also, I mean, I think how do I put this? Just showing everyone continually who these people really are. Like, I'm actually the person that I keep projecting myself as. Like, I'm just this nerd sitting in his room drawing comics, and I talk about games and comics and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all I want is for more comics to exist and for people to be able to make a living at it again without having to bend the knee to things like publishers.
Yep.
I don't have dreams of controlling thousands of people and all this like weird other crap that has nothing to do with comics.
Yeah. The beauty of that idea is that it pushes the glory, so to speak, of the voluntary cooperation. You get artists and writers and admin and letterists who voluntarily come together to build something greater than any one of them could separately, and it's a glorious thing. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah,
and that happens voluntarily. It can't happen by force.
No coercion. No, that's how you end up with the wasteland, the Mad Max wasteland that whatever this community is that it's turning into.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing people leave by the dozens, and maybe a couple people come in for a little while and then they leave again.
Mm-hmm.
No one's staying. Why?
Well, and that's actually I think that's one of the interesting things about the community, and part of the reason there's such a conflict over the terminology, because people aren't keeping the label, but they are keeping their relationships.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things. The community is the relationships. And that's what people, I think, forget, is that the community isn't It's not the name, because like you said, the name doesn't matter. It, the movement existed before it had a name, and it'll exist after it doesn't have the name anymore. And if you know, like Doug Ernst hopes that solid storytelling will overtake the mainstream again, being prodded on by a successful indie market. If that happens, movement continues. It stops being, whatever. So,
Yeah.
if the movement's for truth, then that's a thing. So, but yeah, so that's the thing. That's a parting shot. So, Star's taken off. George has got to take off. I should have left already, and it's my show, so that says something. George, thanks so much for coming on. Doug, thanks so much for coming on. This was a riveting conversation. And for those of you who catch in summation, I want to let you know there are people that I have lost respect for. There is nobody that I hate. I want people to seek truth, and when they do, man, the world opens up its bounty of goodness. I really think that people would be wildly more successful than they can imagine if they would be kind and true and good. And so I'm not about breaking anyone down. I do believe in hope, and I believe that that's a thing. But sometimes growing hurts, and that's the ticket. So
yeah.
And to become greater than you are, first sometimes you must kill who you were. Metaphorically.
Yeah. And avoid people who are not willing to improve themselves and admit that they're ever wrong.
Yeah.
That's the lesson I would say.
Always listen to Doug. We learned that tonight.
But which one?
Anyone named Doug, listen to them.
It's often I find very good advice just in life. It's a weird coincidence. Anyway, you guys have a great one. I'll sign off and tune in next. Hey, next week, hour 2, Matt C is going to be talking about history, and we might have a surprise hour 1 guest. Find out. I think the weekend, I'll know. So, anyhow, have a good one, guys.
Right. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course.
Night.